Welcome to the Gospel and Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Nerbos, and each episode I bring in guests to discuss issues related to the world's cultures from a Christian perspective. Well, thanks for joining me. I'm here with Ric Seaver, Family Life Coordinator, Director at the Fount. Is that the...
Family Ministry Director, but I'm working on a new title.
Okay. You've been in ministry more than 10 years probably, huh?
2012, 8 years. Well,
8 years.
in a vocational ministry, like paid by a church, but I was in volunteer ministry, missions, and stuff like that before.
Now, you've been kind of ahead of the curve on digital ministry, online, reaching out to people across the country, across the world through gaming and such. That was pretty... people couldn't relate to that until the last couple of weeks with the COVID restrictions, the quarantine.
Right.
So tell me how your ministry has changed even at the Fount from the past couple of weeks to this weekend.
Oh, it's changed a lot in the best of ways. I've been living with a dual purpose for the last year, trying to sustain traditional ministry and also trying to lean into this new style online ministry. And it's been really hard. And so when COVID-19 started sweeping and then all the churches kind of got shut down, for me it actually set me free from a whole set of expectations and traditions and things that I just didn't have to do anymore. I didn't have to think about things like Easter egg hunts or Sunday school or things like that. Not that those are bad, but that it set me free to move in a new direction.
How did your congregation change in the past couple of weeks? Your ability to reach people and how you did reach them?
Okay, so we live streamed 2 services now. The first service was really rocky, and I actually didn't even look at the stats for that one because we had people here in the building too.
Yeah.
So it was before they fully banned all attendance. Yeah. I'm glad we live streamed that one still, even though people were in the building. Because it prepared us for the next week. So this last Sunday, we live stream only. We had just a skeleton crew. We stood far apart from each other. We had our worship leader and an accompanist. Mm-hmm. We had the pastor and we had me. And so our normal Sunday morning attendance in our little United Methodist Church in a kind of a shrinking denomination in a country where the faith is kind of shrinking too. We went from 40 who show up on a Sunday morning to we had 450-ish views on Facebook. And that's just 10 times the amount of people watched. I mean, there's questions about, well, how much were they paying attention? Were they doing the dishes or whatever?
Right.
I think those miss the point.
But we may not even pay attention when we're in the pews anyways.
I know for a fact people fall asleep in the pews. Right. For a fact, that happens all the time. So you can't make that comparison. So anyways, 450 people actually watched for more than 3 seconds.
Okay.
I don't know what they were doing. I know my family was sitting on the couch. My wife and my kids were on the couch, and she used her phone and she cast it up to the screen with a Chromecast. So that's cool just in and of itself. But the integration of the chat feature, we use Facebook because our demographic really resonates with Facebook. We have mostly women over 65 as our primary demographic. So Facebook is the place for us. But the chat window goes on the side, and you have people constantly commenting. Like when somebody jumps in to the video, it'll say so and so is watching, and if you're a friend of them, you can wave at them, and then you can make a comment and say, hey, so and so, we're glad you're here, right in the middle of worship. So you're not interrupting the worship, but you're also interacting with people during the service, so that it's not just sitting and looking at the back of people's heads. You're actually interacting. So then, when the worship is particularly moving, people will start doing thumbs ups and hearts. And they'll start saying amen and hallelujah.
Okay.
And so those are called engagements. And in our last video, we had 53 engagements. And
okay.
That would be
53 amens during the church,
right,
during the service.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So if they were here in the building, it'd be like them raising their hands or saying amen.
Okay.
That doesn't happen on a Sunday morning here very often. Just sometimes, but it's not a frequent thing. So the fact that we had 450 people watching and then 53 engagements was huge. It was viewed in the streams of several thousand people, which means they didn't watch it, but they saw it go through their feed.
Right.
And that would be a little bit like people driving by them.
Okay, it was 1,000 people drove by on Sunday morning.
So so between just during our service, it would be like 1,000 people driving by our street and seeing our sign and also seeing like a billboard of the video from inside.
Yeah.
And we probably have 100 cars drive by during that time.
Okay.
So if you were to make like the real world to digital equivalences, that would be kind of the equivalences that I would think of. So anyway, so then that led to us doing an impromptu worship set on Monday night, live streamed, with just the worship leaders, the worship leader and a friend of hers. And during the session, I got a message on Discord from a friend, somebody I just recently met, who was having a really hard time. And I just really felt for her, and I wanted to help her. And so she messaged me, and she was considering something dire in her life because she was feeling hopeless. So I said, hey, I'm not available right at the moment, but if you give me about 10 minutes, I can get upstairs to the studio and I can throw my headphones on, we can chat. This is during the worship set. So I said, but watch this for a little bit while I get ready. So I sent her a link to the live worship set. And then, a few minutes later, she sent me a message that said, basically had a little crying emote. And these there's the movie, Emoji Movie.
Yeah.
It seems so silly. But in that moment, it's a genuine expression of an actual emotion.
Right.
And so I didn't see it as a silly yellow happy face
You knew
with tears.
she was struggling.
I knew that deep in her soul, she was actually feeling that way. And so it had some significance. So it's funny, these little symbols end up actually carrying a lot of emotional value over weight.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she said, I'm crying right now. I can't do this. I don't know what to do. I just want to surrender my life to Christ. And I thought she had done that. We talked about it. She's a Christian. She's on a Christian server. She goes to church every week. She leads in one of the ministries with junior high kids. She's a counselor. And I said, well, haven't you done that? And she said, no, well, I did when I was younger because that was the expectation, because my parents told me that I need to go to church and I need to surrender my life to God so that I don't burn, essentially. I mean, that's more or less how they presented it to her. And I said, well, I mean, they're not totally wrong, but that's not why you surrender your life to Christ.
Yeah.
You have to surrender it yourself for your own reasons, and you have to live in your faith on your own without your parents. And so we had a very long conversation. I was talking over voice, and she was typing because she was too emotional. We had a long conversation about what it looks like to really surrender everything. People's perceptions of you, your parents' hopes and dreams for you, even your love for your fiance, because that was a big thing, was she loved being with her fiance. She thought maybe they could move in together, it would solve some of her problems. And so I said, surrender looks like giving up your fiance. Would you do that? And she's like, I don't know. Like, then you're not ready for surrender. I'm not holding it against you, and I wasn't trying to judge her. I was just like, then you're not quite there. Because Jesus can ask you to give up anything, anytime. And we don't know why. We just say, okay, Lord, it's yours. So then she did get to that point where she finally was like, yes, I'm ready to surrender it all. And then the next day, she sent me a message of an audio recording of herself leading worship in her house on guitar. She said, I haven't picked up my guitar in a long time. I haven't sang in a long time. She said, I'm not a good singer. And I'm like, you're way better than me. So don't even start. And then so I sent that on to the worship leader, and it was a really touching moment. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so what is your idea? What is reaching out to gamers? I know about Facebook and web pages, blogs, but I don't think people under 40 read blogs. So what platform do you use, and what do you do?
There are an infinite number of platforms, and it's really overwhelming when you first start, because you're really not thinking about, how do I phrase it? So strategy is important, demographics are important. You have to know who it is you ought to be in ministry to. It doesn't necessarily make sense for a 60-year-old married man to be in ministry to 14-year-old boys playing Fortnite, which is a video game.
Well, I mean, I've heard the words Twitch.
Oh,
I've
right,
heard the
okay.
word. What's the text or the
Discord?
Discord. I know my kids need to use it now all of a sudden for school.
Yeah.
What do you do on those?
Right. Okay. So there's tools that young people have been using for a long time, and older people now are starting to use them. Zoom, Facebook Messenger videos, Google Hangouts, Discord, Canvas. There's a lot of things that people are starting to become familiar with, kind of instantly. And so what it looked like for me, in a narrow focus on people who are gamers specifically, is that I would go onto Twitch, which is a live streaming platform where gamers and sometimes performers, musicians, crafters, basically anybody, but it's gaming heavy. They go on and they live stream themselves playing video games. And I have to be honest, I was a little bit judgmental at first about this idea. I thought, well, why do these people want to go on and have themselves be seen? And then number two, why would you want to sit and watch people play video games? Why don't you just play the video game?
Right.
But what I found through a fair amount of research, I was spending several hours a night, every night for a couple of months, sort of researching and trying to understand why people were on Twitch, why they were streaming and why they were watching. And what it seemed like they were trying to do with Twitch specifically was that the streamers wanted to share themselves with other people. This is like
who enjoyed the same video game they enjoyed.
Right. They wanted to find people who they had a common interest with, and they just wanted to be in a relationship with them. And so, because our society's become so insulated, and we're so busy, we just ended up not having time or the ability. You know, let's say you play Minecraft. That's a pretty well-known game. You play Minecraft. None of your friends play Minecraft. Your parents think you're silly for playing Minecraft. So what do? You
find 2 million other people who like Minecraft.
So you stream on Twitch, and then you have 100 people, 200 people, 1,000 people watch you play. But not just watch you, because it's not a passive thing. When people are watching on Twitch, they're engaged in a community. So actually, I'm going to make a shout out to a guy named Jax Mackey. Jax Mackey is an iron worker, if I remember right. Jax, if you ever see this, correct me if I'm wrong. Pretty sure you're an iron worker. You're in your golden older years. You got a big gray beard. And at night, he streams Minecraft. Sometimes he streams himself cooking, some other video games that he plays, but I found him with Minecraft. And he had hundreds of people watching him. And he was building cool stuff in Minecraft. He's very talented, but it's the way he decompresses in the evening. And people were watching him, and people were engaging with him, and they would come into the chat, which runs on the side. You have the video of the streamer, which is the person in a camera, and then you have the gameplay behind them. And then you have the chat that goes on the side. So they come in, they say, "Hey, what's up, Jax?" And then he would shout out to them, and he'd say, "Oh, hey, Grumpy Monk, how are you? Like, how was your day today? What did you do?" And then they would have an interaction. And so you're just hanging out with people. Mm-hmm. And that's what people don't do.
Hanging out with people.
They don't hang out with people.
I understand you were giving an example of a musician who she was able to play in bars or whatever. Now she's confined to her home, her audience is confined, she's on Twitch, and in a way that's changed the way she's doing her music.
Right. Yeah, she's a live music performer. She's very talented in Nashville. Her name is Anel. And she was playing bars, and she has a website. She's got she's recorded some original singles. One of them is amazing, called Dragons. Very good. Go find it. And so she was really smart because she was forward thinking, and she didn't just sit around and say, "Woe is me." She said, "Okay, what do I do now?" And she started a Twitch channel, and she didn't get any extra equipment. She just had what she had. She's using her webcam. I'm going to mail her my webcam, my own personal one, because I think she deserves it and needs it. So she went on Twitch, and within 2 or 3 days, she had hundreds of people watching her at a time. So picturing the situation where somebody could go on after a hard day, and they can say, "Oh, and now I know her. I know her. I've seen her. We've interacted. For the extreme example, my wife passed away 6 months ago, and I'm going to watch Anel stream her music, and then she says, "How was your day?" And I say, It was okay. This is the anniversary of my wife's passing, and I miss her, greatly." And she can say, "Oh my gosh, that's terrible." And she might say, "What was your song? Your wedding song? Or what was the song that was important to you?" And she could play that song. for that person. And they can have this moment, even though they're across the country, across the planet, and there are 300 other people waiting, or 300 other people watching. These two people can have this moment of an intimate relying on each other and of community. And then 300 other people can watch and be a part of it and to celebrate that really touching moment, relational moment. And this is all digital. So there's a lot of doubt about, or there's a lot of people who would say, well, you have to, the face-to-face, you've got to have it.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, I mean, yeah, you do, but don't dismiss the online because we can connect in an entirely different way.
She's interacting with him. It's not a one-way thing.
It's not a one-way
It's not, streaming isn't just you uploading a video.
Right.
It's live video and talking with people, chat windows,
Right.
responding to them. So I understand you actually built up a small group, one of your multiple small group type ministries that you have throughout the week, but a small group of just people you found on Twitch?
So I found initially some people on Twitch. I found a church called God Squad Church, which is kind of the first church for gamers. And then I found a pastor named Pastor Scar, who's in Australia, who's arguably the biggest pastor online. And they each have something called a Discord server. Discord is another program, another app. And Discord is really where the deep relationship can happen, because it's almost like living in a village where the people are directly connected with each other all the time. You hear everything that happens in your neighbor's house. You walk out your front door, the other neighbor's there, you talk to them. Not in the US, we have these insulated houses, but in like a tribal village, and actually I hadn't really thought about this being like a tribal thing. Not in the negative sense of tribal, but people who all have something in common, a tribe. And they, like, you have these little things all facing each other. So in the morning when you come out, online, you say, hey, good morning. And then 5 other people say, hey, good morning, how are you today? What are you doing today? And so these Discord servers, I got connected, and they have a prayer request section. And I would go to the prayer request section, and I would find people who had a prayer need that was something I could address practically. So one guy in particular, his wife had a miscarriage, and I understand that, personally. So I reached out to him and said, hey, man, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's really hard. I understand that. Can I pray for you? And he said, absolutely. And I don't remember if we did it over voice or just text that first time. But that started us on a relationship where we built into more and more relationship. And then one day, he and several other people who have similar stories with, all a little bit different. One day I started asking them, would you like to meet online with me once a week for about an hour, hour and a half? And they all said, yeah, they desperately wanted and needed that. Some of them actually didn't say that. Some of them said, meh, I guess so. But they're the kind that would not go to anything else. And so even just...
These aren't all Christians.
These are all Christians. There's a couple in the group that are struggling significantly with their faith. They all believe in God. They all believe that Jesus was a real historical person.
Okay.
They have questions about God's goodness, God's provision,
right.
God's providence. But so then you ask the question, well, what is a Christian? So some of them are not fully surrendered. They're in that phase where they're kind of like, I'm a little bit mad at God.
Yeah.
But they still show up every single week and tell us they're mad at God. And we still tell them we love you, and so does God. And we'll see you next week.
This image of, there are people who will go to a small group on Discord who would not walk into a church for a weekly Bible study. Some of it's the anonymity. You have some who just text into the small group, some who just voice in without.
Right. Yeah. So Discord is a very complex tool. It's not necessarily intuitive. It takes some time. It took me a long time to really fully understand it. But once you understand it, it's invaluable. So here's what it looks like. On Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific, I log on and we initiate a video call. We initiate a call. And then the people on the other side, these other 7 people, can respond either by just doing voice, or they can do video, or they can just type into a little chat window. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like Zoom, but a little bit different. And that it's constantly connected to this community. It's not an on now and off later thing. It's always So then we get on, and then we're using the model, the class meeting model that John Wesley used during the early Methodist movement. So basically we get on and we take turns. I try to keep small talk to a minimum because I don't want our scheduled 7:30 to 8:30 Pacific to get overrun by chit-chat. Because we can chit-chat anytime during the week. We're connected on Discord. We literally can just send a message or a video or a phone call anytime we want to, and we do, often. But this time is set aside for discussing the state of our soul. So we answer the question, how is it with your soul? I did start adding some prompts that are from the general rules that the United Methodist Church has adopted that are kind of modeled after the class meeting questions that Wesley used. They would address the specific areas of our soul, like how we present ourselves to others, whether or not we're giving to the poor, whether or not we're overly concerned with our appearance or our dress, those kinds of questions. So now we're starting to answer that prompt in addition to how's it with your soul, and that's it. There's no intake, there's no information. That time is only about transformation. So there's kind of an expectation that these people have to be connected to the Word and in worship other times during the week, because this is not a Bible study.
Now I understand, how is this different than just standing on a street corner and preaching? You just get on Discord and tell all 2 million people playing Minecraft, hey, Jesus died for your sins. Is it more effective than that, or?
I think it's way more effective. So there are people who have been brave enough to stand on a street corner with a Bible and proclaim the name of Jesus. And they're braver than me, honestly.
Okay.
I'm not that brave. And there probably are people who've come to faith through that kind of thing. I don't know.
It seems reasonable that it would have happened. Yeah.
Right. I've not experienced it. So a guy that does that actually locally here in Huntington Beach frequently is Ray Comfort. And he goes to the pier, and the way he does it is not just the prophetic, like, turn or burn. He has some pretty sophisticated conversations and tactics and things like that, and it's pretty interesting to watch. The problem with what he does, and I don't fault him for it, it's not his fault that it's a problem, is the people who are there for the beach.
That's what I worry about. I go on to Minecraft, I go on to these games, I don't know anything about those games, and I want to tell them about Jesus. Right, and so you go to the beach, you want to tell them about Jesus, like, we're here for the beach.
Right.
So you try and enter this conversation on Discord or Twitch. Right. So what do you do instead?
So it's a long game. It's not drive-by evangelism.
Yeah.
It's sitting with your eyes open. And it's resting in the Spirit, and it's allowing the Holy Spirit to guide your attention and your focus through these communities. So it's a little bit like if you were to sit in like a town square or a mall. We don't have town squares here. Maybe somebody does. Like a mall. And you were to sit, let's say, in the food court of the mall. And you were just to pray and say, God, just open my eyes to somebody who needs your word today, or who needs your love today. And as you're sitting there, you're noticing things. And you're noticing, like, oh, that person is eating alone, and they look a little sad. That woman is yelling at her kids in a way that's a bit above and beyond what I would expect. That man is having an argument. He's very angry at his wife. That guy is going through the trash can looking for something to eat. So these things are happening around us all the time. But we don't feel empowered to get involved because that's somebody else's business. Right? So to walk up to the lady who's yelling at her kid and say, hey, are you okay? Do you want me to pray for you? That would be really out of the bounds of social norms.
Right. But on Discord, people are laying that all out. Right? They're inviting you in by saying, let me tell you about this problem with my wife, with my kids, or whatever. I mean, they're my parents, or whatever it is.
Exactly. So imagine this woman who's yelling at her kids, and then after she's done yelling at her kids, she turns to the entire food court in the mall and says, somebody please help me. My child has autism, and he is aggressive and violent with me and his siblings, and he destroys our house, and I don't know what to do, and I'm at my wit's end, and I have no support, and no one cares. And she just shouts that out to this whole place. Yeah. And what typically would happen is everybody would go, okay, gotta go. Yeah. But we have an opportunity to say, do you want me to pray for you? Just that simple.
You've been offering to pray for people on Discord, right?
That's
That's kind of the inroads.
That's it.
Yeah, and and people will take you up on it. I don't know what percentage.
90%.
That's what I hear when evangelists say they offer to pray. They almost never get turned down.
Right.
I've had it a couple times in my life. People say no, but
Well, and online it's probably a lower number, I think.
Oh, who would say no?
Because it's a lower cost of entry. It's less intrusive.
Yeah.
For me to say, hey, can I pray for you online for somebody just over text, over a direct message, a text direct message, they almost always will say yes. Because, well, number one, they're asking for prayer. So when I say, can I pray for you? They're like, well, yeah, that's what I asked for.
Yeah.
But not only that, it's very non-intrusive. Whereas if you were in person, face-to-face, and you say, can I pray for you?
Yeah.
They don't know you.
They don't know what to expect.
They don't know what to expect. They don't know where you're from. They don't know anything about you. And if they were to be real and honest with you, and you're a real person, and you live near them, all of a sudden the stuff that they might unload on you could be incriminating. It could be used against them.
Yeah.
Whereas online, they can just say, there's some anonymity.
Less threatening.
To say, yeah, pray for me.
Yeah.
So you pray for them, and depending on their answers or depending on the prayer, you might say at the end of it, are you connected to a local church? Like, do you go to church on Sundays? Mm-hmm. And if they say yes, you use the app and you say, yes, connected to a local church. And then you would say, well, does your church offer small groups? And then if the answer is no, then you push no. And then you say, well, we have some small groups that are forming, and they meet once a week on Discord. Or what you could use other platforms. Discord is just what I've been using.
Yeah.
And if they say no, they don't offer that, and you can say, well, we have some. If you're interested, we don't want to pull you from your church. We want to support your church. And you in your discipleship. So if they say, no, they don't have a group, we say, okay, well, would you like to be a part of a group? And then you choose the time zone, because right now, my small group, we have a guy in Australia, we have one in Boston, we have one in Missouri, one in Oregon. Another one won't tell me what area he's in. He's in the Eastern time zone.
Okay.
And then there's another guy who's in Scandinavia somewhere, Norway, Sweden. I don't remember. So anyway, so we're all over the world. So we have to know that those time zones and our availability mix. So then they choose a time zone. And then a category like single man between 25 and 40. Mm-hmm. Or married woman between 40 and 50. Whatever. So that they get placed with a group leader who is representative of their demographic.
Yeah.
And then we place them with a group leader. And then they're there. They're in a small group that meets every week, that addresses the depth of their soul, and that watches over one another in love.
Yeah.
Because that was Wesley's whole idea, was that we ought to, I don't have the quotes memorized, but the idea was we ought to be watching over one another in love, and pushing on towards righteousness, towards holiness.
Mm-hmm. Not just getting people to pray the sinner's prayer, in other words.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
not just saying, well, you're saved, you're not saved.
Right.
And oh great, you're saved. Now go figure it out.
Yeah. Well, thank you for introducing us to these this new frontier of ministry, and especially timely.
Yeah.
With this quarantine.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rick.
I'm glad to.
You're offering to do a webinar
Mm-hmm.
to instruct others on or to answer questions about how to engage in these ministries.
Right.
So I should put that link here.
Yeah, if you're interested in learning more about the tools, because the tools can be really daunting and overwhelming, and it took me a year to learn them. And we don't have a year. We have a week.
All right.
So let's get on it. So we'll have a Zoom webinar, and you can jump on, and I can show you the tools I use. I can show you exactly how I do what I do, and you can ask me questions that you might have.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us on the Gospel and Culture podcast. And to learn more, go to gospelandculturepodcast.com.